Hey everyone, Carl here with Literate Lessons bringing you another deep dive this week. This week I thought it would be cool to go over some of the overall data that we got from the EUIC and explore where the meta is starting to change. Before we get started into all of that though, make sure to do all that fun YouTube stuff for us. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications for when new videos go live. Leave a comment down below about our question of the day is, I would like to hear what your favorite team from the EUIC is. There was a lot of cool and unique things going on at that event, which we'll get into here in a little bit. And I want to hear what you all thought about some of like the top cut teams, some of the top 64 teams, a team you've seen on camera. If you were there, maybe your own team. I'm super interested in hearing about that. My answer to the question, my personal favorite, is Victor Medina's team. That double weather is very reminiscent of what I liked to play at the tail end of Series 8 or so when it first popped up, and I really like the idea, and I'm surprised to see a version of it do so well. So let's talk about the top 8 before we get into the top 64 data a little bit. There was a lot to explore overall in this event in particular, mainly due to the fact that there was a very distinct lack of the Rinya Sun team. We didn't really see too terribly much about it. I believe, if I remember correctly, there were 3 total copies in the top 64, which for an event of that size means that nobody brought it. Either that or everyone was prepared for it and it got pushed out and only the best of the best rose to the top. As you can see evident here, Eric Rios's team, he ended up winning the event. Congrats to him. But I think this Rinya Sun dominance here at this event is more indicative of Eric being a very good player rather than Rinya Sun being the end-all be-all. If we looked at some of what was going on in the finals, I believe Oliver's team, who was the other grand finalist, his team was really close to beating it, and it came down to a 50-50 coin flip. Literally was just not the Pokemon needed, not there was no right line. It was literally you had to read your opponent and your opponent had to do the thing you thought they were going to do. If you haven't watched that yet, I'm sure it's up on YouTube in multiple places. Go check it out. It's a great match and it's a great example of what good VGC is. Even though we have these dominant archetypes of Zacian plus Weather Setter or Regieleki and things like that, this has been probably some of the most fun VGC I've seen in a long time compared to like Series 8, Series 7 and 9 and things like that. But yeah, overall, Eric Rios won the event. Rinya Sun, Oliver Escalogne came in second. I believe Joe and Victor were top 4, and then Guillermo, Javier, Alex, and Marcus were all in the bottom top 8 of that. And looking at this, like immediately, you just see like, well, Zacian's really popular. There were 3 teams without Zacian in the top 8. That's one of the biggest like changes we've seen in a very long time. Usually it's 7 Zacian plus like a whatever in this last slot, like a Lunala or a Cali Ice or something like that. And instead we only have 5 with 3 non-Zacian teams, which is insane. On the flip side of that, there are 3 Groudon teams and 2 Kyogre teams. That's a trend that we've seen continuing to go that way. Groudon being Rinya Sun being more popular, having Gastrodon means that Kyogre is less prominent because the Rinya Sun team can usually get it into a 60-40 matchup in their favor. The other 2 versions of Sun are Lunaludon and Yvelodon, which both have been popping up here lately in smaller events, doing really well there. We saw a version of Joe UX9's team here in 4th place at Liverpool playing Bronzong instead of this Porygon 2. Overall, it's just a matter of preference. I think Bronzong would be fine on this spot, and I believe there was another one with Bronzong in the top 64 when we get to that. The other Sun team, this Lunaludon, we've talked about this a little bit in a deep dive like 2 months back, it feels like now, and I think this archetype is poised to strike. There's some really good things that it can do alongside Venusaur and Thundurus, and you can just play some certain Pokemon that you can't get away with playing with Rinya Sun or Yvelodon. and things like that. So I'm super excited to see where Lunaludon goes. They're mostly going to probably be playing Venusaur or Charizard, but you could even see Charizard in this last slot and maybe play Regieleki instead of Thundurus. Who knows? I'm super excited to see this archetype explored. As we get into the bottom half of these top 8 teams here, these next 2 teams are probably the most unique we've seen in a very long time, just in terms of Pokemon used, and they're just run through top 8. This first one being the Double Steel Dialga Zacian. This is something we have seen inklings of, just little bits and pieces here and there. Dialga is a very, very powerful Pokemon, but it kind of struggles against certain things, and Zacian kind of shores those up really, really well. And you have really big weaknesses to ground and fire and fighting and all that stuff, and that's why we have Weezing and Rillaboom and Blastoise and Porygon 2 to kind of just shore up those weaknesses. What's cool about this is Dialga is the max target most of the time. Blastoise and Rillaboom don't have to max, but can be max targets. And they both still offer great support when they're not Dynamax. So overall, I like this squad a lot. I'm not sure if I'm in love with the Double Steel Core, but I'm excited to see where that one goes. And if you remember my prediction video way back, feels like 2 weeks ago now, I talked about how Calyrex Ice and Palkia needed to do something and it had to be a good event. And it wasn't a good event for them. I think there were 2 or 3 Calyrex Ice Palkia teams in the top 64. And then this version, Top Cut, I think this is probably the most optimized version of Calyrex Ice you can probably get to, outside of maybe some small move changes on some of the Pokemon. This team is really, really cool. This Calyrex Ice Reshiram duo, they answer everybody's weaknesses really, really well. Reshiram doesn't like Groudon, doesn't like Kyogre. Calyrex Ice can usually kind of stand up to those guys. Calyrex Ice hates Steel types and Zacian specifically. Reshiram does a fantastic job of just blowing those up. Not to mention you have Incineroar, Gastrodon, and Mungus as your Fire, Water, Grass core. And then you have Mimikyu to help you set up Trick Room. The cool thing about this lead was this eject button. Is that what it was? Yeah, eject button, Incineroar, and safety goggles Mimikyu meant that it was almost impossible unless you had inner focus taunt or really fast fake out compared to Incineroar, and then a way to also double up on the Mimikyu and set taunt or something like that. It was really, really hard to interact with unless you were specifically built to deal with it. Nowadays, I think most people have figured this out. I don't expect this to be the norm. I expect this to go back to Mental Herb, and I expect this to go back to Safety Goggles or whatever, just to play around with Mungus stuff. But it was really, really cool for that event because no one was built to stop it. And so you were guaranteed to get Trick Room up. Your Calyrex Ice didn't have to really max depending on the matchup. And you could Shadow Sneak, activate its weakness policy, and then you just blow through teams using Glacial Lance. It was very, very powerful and very, very cool. The last top 8 team here is our second Yveltal team, which we'll talk about Yveltal when we get to our stats a little bit more. I'm excited to talk about this because I think Yveltal is hidden OP in this format and no one's really respecting it. But this is super standard. Like I would not be surprised to see this just everywhere on ladder and stuff like that, but it's not cool enough for people to do that. This Marcus Stratter played Alex in the last round of Swiss before top 8, and then they both made top 8 after that, which was kind of cool. But that match was really, really good. Really, really excited to watch that one back if I ever get a chance to, because I will probably be making flowcharts for Indy here soon, and that's going to be one of my best examples. But overall, I think that the top 8 was very diverse. I'm excited to look at the top 64 data with you and kind of show you how good it actually, how diverse the format actually is in comparison to what we see in Top Cuts and things like that. Okay, now that we've talked about the top 8, let's talk about this top 64 a little bit. Big shout out to Evan for setting up all this data for me. He has been working with Victory Road and doing a lot of their data collection for events and stuff in his free time, and he made this little chart for them and they didn't really want it. I told him I will use the heck out of it, and I think this is great. I love seeing this stuff on paper and like as visuals, so I'm super excited to talk about this stuff. As always, Incineroar, Zacian, Rillaboom, they're the big three. I see these a ton on every team, especially since Rillaboom and Incineroar combo with any water type you want to put with it, be it Kyogre, Gastrodon, Suicune down here. We'll talk about this team in a minute. I think this is super duper weird. But the fact that you can just make a Fire Water Grass core with Incineroar and Rillaboom, have extra recovery, have double fake out, your water type can be really, really offensive, it can be really, really supportive and things like that. So I think this is good for the format, not in terms of just overall diversity, but in terms of just like strength. Teams that would normally be weaker to Zacian and things and other Pokemon like Groudon and Kyogre can play this Rillaboom, Incineroar, whatever core, like usually Gastrodon, and your team will do fairly well still in those matchups. Moving out of the top three, one of the Pokemon that I expected to see a lot more of, Thundurus, did show up a lot at this event, alongside Calyrex Shadow. As we see here, this Zacian, Calyrex Shadow, Incineroar, Rillaboom, Gastrodon, Thundurus core. This whole team had 4 total, and was probably the most popular repeated archetype at EUIC in the top 64 at least. And this was my pick to win it all. I thought this was going to go very, very far, take the cake, win the whole shebang. I believe Wolfie was the closest one with Calyrex Shadow on their team to get to top 8, and he was 9th. Got to be the bubble boy for this event. And I'm kind of sad that they didn't win. I think if Calyrex Shadow had won this event, we would be talking about a whole different format and a whole different set of scenarios going into Indy. But since Serenia Sun won, I believe it's going to be fairly status quo from EUIC to Indy, and the meta is not going to shift a whole lot as we get into it. Groudon here is the second most popular restricted behind Calyrex Shadow. Technically they're tied, but whatever. I'm not surprised by this, but hearing of the fact that there was not a whole lot of Rinya Sun, meaning that there's only 3 of these Rinya Sun teams, means that there's 16 Groudons that aren't Rinya Sun still in top 64. And I'm just like, if you're not playing Rinya Sun, then why are you playing Groudon? Like, and once we get to looking at the top 64, we'll kind of see, oh, you're playing Venusaur and you're playing this other stuff. And there's even almost Rinya Sun teams, as I call them, where it's all of these 5 plus the Thundurus. It's super weird. It works in certain situations. You're better in the mirror, but overall, I think just playing Rinya Sun is the way to go if you're unsure on your team selections right now. Looking into some other usage stats, Kyogre here at 8 and 17 total usage. That's the next highest restricted. Yveltal, the next highest after that at 9. This is something that we weren't expecting to really see. This is something that's very, very popular right now, and probably is going to get a real good resurgence at Indy. These Yveltal, Alecki, Landorus teams are very, very powerful as long as they don't run into exactly Calyrex Ice, which has been on the decline here lately because Calyrex Ice and Palkia has struggled so much against Rinya Sun. Looking at some of our Sun things and whatnot, we have Venusaur at 15 and Charizard at 10. This shows me even more that there are less Rinya Sun teams than people probably planned for, and this is why the format looks so diverse. Gastrodon here at 15, kind of the same thing. I think Gastrodon is just becoming the most popular water type that's not a restricted, and I'm not sure if that's fine for the format or not. I definitely think that people are adapting well. They're playing Rillaboom, they're playing Venusaur, they're playing their grass types. I can't tell you how many times I ran into a Grass Knot Tapu Fini or Energy Ball Calyrex Shadow or things like that where my Gastrodon gets blown up. So I'm definitely kind of just like off the Gastrodon plan for a little bit, letting other people play with it some, and we'll see where it goes. Looking at some of these Prankstermons, Whimsicott and Grimmsnarl at 14 and 11 apiece. I will be the first person to tell you, fast support wins games. Definitely Prankster's very, very strong still. Indeedee is around. You don't have to worry about that too much because you just focus on doing your own thing. Tailwind, Helping Hand, in the case of Whimsicott, in the case of Grimmsnarl, setting up screens for damage reduction. So there's a lot that you can still do with these Pokemon outside of trying to take out your opponent's stuff. And even like Regieleki with Electro Web or Screech, being able to just be the fastest thing on the field most of the time is important. Going through the rest of this, I wanted to talk about this team here. The Solgaleo, Groudon, Incineroar, Suicune, Venusaur, Thundurus thing. This is very, very interesting because if this was the third most popular variant of like Solgaleo, or fourth most popular with 3 copies, how many Solgaleo actually were there in top 64? Because it's not on this chart at all. But there were 9 Yveltal, and it's not on this chart at all. So what that tells me is the Yveltal teams haven't been figured out yet, and Solgaleo is not very popular. When we get into looking at the rest of the top 64 to kind of wrap up here, we'll count these Solgaleos, and we'll see exactly how much Solgaleo we saw in the top 64. And that's all I've got this week. I hope that this little look at the EUIC has influenced your meta views a little bit. Maybe have quelled your bloodlust to ban Rinya's Sun from events and things like that. I think that we have definitely had enough time to figure out where Rinya's Sun is not the end-all be-all team that it appeared to be at the start. It's definitely trending downwards now. So whether that means that you can spike an event with it, or you can maybe not have to plan as hard for it, definitely is a good thing, I think, for the format right now. Again, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We recently passed our goal for 350 before I even leave for Indy, and I'm super stoked about that. Would love to keep growing, maybe hit 400 by the end of July. I don't know. That's the next goal, I guess, is some number in July. Would love to grow to that. If you're interested in talking VGC, playing VGC, or anything like that, you can always join the Discord. It is free and open to everyone. We host events there all the time, whether it be like best of 3 events, ladder events. We do draft leagues depending on what's popular at the time. It's a kind of a rotating cycle. And then if you're interested in getting ready for Indy or New Jersey, if you're getting into that, definitely come and hang out with us. We'll help you get ready, give you tips and pointers for newer players to go to events and things like that. Super excited to get ready to go to Indy. That would be next week. I'll be on the road when the next deep dive goes live. So hopefully I'll have time to record by then. But if I don't see you then, have a great rest of your week. I will hopefully see a lot of you at Indianapolis for probably the biggest regional North America is going to have this year. And I will hope to see you all there. Bye, everyone.